Hey guys, this is Paul, and this is another episode of Game Dev Paradise. Alright, so what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be talking about how to learn programming. Short version. So I recorded another one of these over the span of a few days, and I was like 40 minutes. I'm like, oh my god, who has time for that? So if you do have time for that, check out that version, or both, or whatever, since you have so much time. But if you don't have time, then I hope you're in this version, the short version. So let's get started. Let me try to just keep this as short as possible, not a ramble, as I'm doing right now. So even though this is the short version, I'm going to do my usual disclaimer. I'm not an expert. If you disagree with something I say, great. Look it up for yourself. Find out for yourself. Take whatever is useful from this. Toss out whatever is not useful from this. Ignore it completely. You can call me an idiot. Perfectly fine with that. You can totally disagree with me. Perfectly fine. If something I say doesn't mesh with you, um, it's not necessarily because you're wrong. You can think I'm wrong. That's fine. Go on with your life. Find your answers. Totally encourage you to do that. All right, so let's get started. So, um, whenever I say this, how to learn, how to do something, how to something, or what is something, I always mean, here, this is really what I mean, right? How I learned programming, or more specifically, why I think programming is taught wrong, um, in books in school, and even online courses and things like that. But really, what I'm talking about is, because this is all from my experience, is how I learn programming. That's what I'm going to be telling you here. So it's important to understand what I'm saying to judge it. So what I'm trying to tell you right now in this video, hopefully short, is how I learned programming. So I'm a game developer, indie game developer. I wasn't always like this. I was a kid dreaming of being one. And up until the point till I learned programming, to the point I was able to make a game, I had multiple failures um, through trying to learn on my own, via books, via school. So I had basically all these failures, and failure is not a bad word. I kind of wish we had a different word for failure, but I like to use it because it's just being honest. Failure is not a bad word. Failure is what happens before success. If you can shorten failures, you might actually be getting faster towards success. So that's another potential topic a little bit later. But basically, I tried learning programming on my own as a kid, via books and via school, and all these methods didn't work that well. But in the end, they contributed towards me learning programming. So via books, when I was growing up, and probably nowadays, there was this famous, or sort of widely used, series of books called Teach Yourself C++ in 21 Days. And I had the added benefit of my brother buying this book and sharing it with me, and my brother going through this book and having a good deal of success with it. And I read this book, and I got up to like day 10 or day 12 or something. And then I had my failure, and I couldn't recover. Similar thing with classes later on in grade school, in high school, actually, sorry. I had a basic programming class, and that went pretty well. Um, in the basic language. That's what I mean here, basic programming class. That went pretty well. But then when I went to college, I did a class for learning C++, and I didn't do so great. And thinking back, kind of having the perspective after I learned programming and during my process of learning programming in C++, or at least to the level I'm at, I had this perspective on why those things didn't work for me. That's what I'm going to share with you. Basically, at the beginnings, the concepts were very simple. The beginning concepts were like adding numbers, subtracting numbers, different types of variables, like strings, that take words, integers that take numbers, and things like that, and manipulating them, things like that. Concepts were simple. Once the concepts became more complicated, that's when I experienced the failure, because the way that I tend to learn personally, and perhaps you're the same way, is I tend to learn things based on need. If I need it, I'll learn it. That's kind of my way of learning things. Maybe you're the same, maybe you're not. Then whatever. Maybe this will help, maybe this won't. Um, but the way that these classes and books presented information was just very kind of abstract and vague. They were teaching the theory of it, and it kind of looked like this. And this is pretty simple, and I can understand this, and as a student I understood this and learned it. But once things became more complicated and they were presented in this way, that's when it lost me, because these things have no real use, no practical use. Adding two numbers, um, by itself, just by itself, has no practical use. Now when you change this and say, um, and do something like this, well, now it made sense to me. Bullet damage is 10, health is 100. Take when you do bullet damage to health, then you subtract bullet damage from health, right? And somewhere else you would do something like this. Is the player dead? If health is less than 0, then true, right? Then player is dead. So this made sense to me, and I could learn programming. But the abstract int x equals 0, int y equals whatever, more complicated versions of that, I had a pretty tough time with it because they weren't practical. So how I learned programming was actually by being hugely motivated to make a game. Is this even a word? There we go. So I was so motivated to make a game, and because games are these big pieces of software, I needed the more advanced topics to make the game, and then I sought them out, and then I understood them in the way that they would benefit me in the game. The way that programming tends to be taught in school is in these sorts of bite-sized assignments and examples, and I think these are pretty inefficient for certain people like me to explain these higher concepts, to have these sorts of crappy examples. For example, adding two numbers together in a different way that's using a more advanced method. Well, why do you need it like that? You can just do it the simpler way, and that was a real blocking point for me. So the other thing that school does, classes, is, a semester might last 4 months, and the teacher might give you an assignment that spans a week. But this like huge piece of software here, like a game or whatever other application that takes more than a week, well, that requires all these different ways, or this different organization, even reusing code, being efficient with code, jumping from one point to another, referencing these other things, these advanced topics here. For example, this is using a static class here, for example. So in that case, so basically, teaching in school and having these sorts of short-term classes with short-term assignments really hurt my understanding, because there's an easy way to do it. For a short-term assignment, you can easier way to do it that the teacher wasn't looking for. The teacher was looking for the more advanced way, but in order to understand the more advanced way, I needed to understand why I would ever use it, and that wasn't presented to me in such a way that I understood it. Once I got to working on a game, that's when things started clicking. Um, and because I had the background of going through classes and going through books and self-experimentation, I was able to learn programming. So to sum up this short version, hopefully I didn't lose you guys that think it's too long. I think programming in books and classes is taught incorrectly for some people. For some people, for certain people, have a hard time learning through advanced concepts, through vague examples and examples that don't make practical sense for certain mindsets. An advanced topic in programming that could be done in an easier way with a simpler topic just really, really hurt my understanding of it. I'm like, hey, why not just do it this way, the simpler way? Well, the answer is the simpler way would be really, really unwieldy in an advanced application like this one, for example. Um, but that really hurt my understanding. However, failure is okay because it's just a little stepping stone onto success. So those little failures, those classes that didn't teach me the great way, for me personally, for others like my brother, they were a good teaching tool, and my brother probably did a lot of experimentation, a lot of learning on his own. But my brother was, I believe, much more successful with books and classes than I was. Um, but for people like me, how to learn programming, learn by doing. Set yourself a goal, copy and paste. Copy and paste code, which basically means experiment. Bash your head against the brick wall, which really what I'm trying to say is keep trying until you learn. Not to bash your head and try to figure things out. All right, guys, I hope this video was helpful to you. If not, hey, sorry about that. If it is, let me know. If you have any feedback or comments, let me know. So for these videos, I'm trying to put down sort of this groundwork, and then going into hopefully more interesting topics about stuff a little bit more related to game development, presenting it, explaining it, more of my philosophy on it. So thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again on Game Dev Paradise.